A billionaire's world changed forever the moment he saw a waitress cradle his disabled son. What happened next transformed them both in ways no one expected. Every Sunday morning, the same black luxury car would pull into a small parking space outside a quiet diner in a peaceful little town. It wasn't a fancy place. The chairs were old, the floor creaked sometimes, and the tables had little scratches that told stories of years gone by. But there was a warm smell of pancakes and coffee in the air, and the people who worked there smiled with their eyes, not just their mouths. It was the kind of place where regulars were greeted by name, and new visitors were made to feel like they belonged. Inside that black car sat a man named Richard Cole, dressed in a crisp gray suit and wearing dark sunglasses, even when the sky was cloudy. Next to him sat a little boy, Jamie, around 7 years old, with a thin frame and gentle brown eyes. Jamie was in a wheelchair. His legs didn't work like most children's, and he struggled to speak clearly, but there was something soft and kind in his face, the kind of look that made people want to protect him. Richard was not like most dads. He didn't laugh loudly, he didn't chat with other parents, he didn't even look around much when he came into the diner. Every Sunday, he quietly rolled Jamie inside, guided the wheelchair to the same corner table by the window, and sat across from his son. They rarely talked. Richard would order the same things: scrambled eggs and toast for himself, and pancakes. With syrup for Jamie, he would cut the pancakes into little pieces and feed Jamie slowly, gently wiping his son's mouth with a napkin after every bite. The waitress who served them was a young woman named Lily. She was in her 20s, with kind blue eyes, curly hair tied back in a bun, and always wearing a green apron with a tiny sunflower pin. She never missed a shift. Her hands were always busy, carrying plates, refilling coffee, cleaning up spills, but she always made time for a smile. When Richard and Jamie walked in, she would greet them with a soft, "Good morning, gentlemen," and bring them their usual without needing to ask. Lily had noticed them since their very first visit over a year ago. At first, she thought Richard was just a quiet man. But over time, she began to understand. She saw the way he looked at Jamie with love, but also with deep pain. She noticed how his eyes sometimes looked far away, like he was stuck in a memory he didn't want to revisit. She didn't know the full story, but she could feel the weight he carried, and she respected his silence. What Lily didn't know was that Richard Cole was one of the richest men in the country. He was the CEO of a tech company that built software, used all over the world. His face was on magazines, though he avoided the spotlight. His mansion was hidden behind tall gates, his days filled with meetings, phone calls, and important decisions. But none of that mattered to him anymore. Since the accident, 3 years earlier, Richard had been driving with his wife and Jamie on a mountain road during a family trip. It was supposed to be a happy time. They had just celebrated Jamie's 4th birthday. But one moment of distraction, one slippery turn, and their car slid off the road. Richard survived with injuries. Jamie was left permanently disabled. His wife, Laura, was gone. Since that day, Richard had changed. He stopped attending parties, stopped smiling in photos, stopped talking to most of his friends. He poured all his energy into taking care of Jamie. He hired therapists, doctors, and nurses. But emotionally, he shut down. His heart was broken in a way that money couldn't fix. He didn't trust people easily, and he didn't let anyone get close, not even his staff. That's why their quiet Sunday routine became so important to him. The diner was the only place where things felt normal. Even if only for a short time. Lily, meanwhile, was fighting her own silent battles. She lived in a small apartment with her mother, who had been ill for years. The medical bills were piling up, and Lily had given up her dream of becoming a nurse to take care of her mom and work full-time. She never complained. She didn't have time to. She worked at the diner 6 days a week and cleaned offices at night twice a week. Some nights, she only slept for 3 hours. But she always showed up at the diner with a clean apron and a ready smile. She noticed how Jamie's face lit up every time he saw pancakes, how his eyes followed the birds outside the window, how he tried to say thank you, even when the words were difficult for him. Lily treated him like any other boy, not like someone to feel sorry for, but like someone with his own light? Richard noticed this. Saw how Lily didn't flinch when Jamie struggled to speak, how she always waited patiently for him to finish, and how she crouched down to his level instead of towering over him like most adults did. Though Richard never said much, he appreciated Lily, but he never showed it. He thought if he started talking too much, he might lose control of the wall he had built around his heart. So week after week, he remained polite but distant. Lily didn't mind. She had learned to read people through small signs, the way someone placed their napkin, how often they looked at the clock, how tightly they held their coffee cup. She knew Richard was hurting. She didn't know why, but she could feel it. Then came the Sunday that would change everything. It was colder than usual that morning. A soft drizzle fell from the sky, painting the windows with tiny droplets. The diner was busier than normal, filled with people escaping the rain. Lily was moving from table to table, balancing plates and refilling mugs, when she saw Richard and Jamie enter. She gave them their usual greeting and quickly brought over their breakfast. Jamie seemed a little more restless than usual, kept shifting in his seat, waving his arms and making soft noises. Richard tried to calm him with a soft voice and a hand on his shoulder, but the boy seemed upset, though it wasn't clear why. Maybe it was the noise, or the weather, or just a bad day. Richard stood up to go pay the bill while Jamie remained. Seated, he walked over to the counter, pulling out his wallet. But in the moment he turned his back, something happened. Jamie, trying to reach for something on the table, maybe a napkin or his cup, lost his balance. In a sudden moment, the wheelchair rolled slightly, his small body tilted, and before anyone could catch him, he fell to the floor with a thud. The sound made people turn. A few gasped. The room froze. But Lily didn't. She dropped the plate she was holding and rushed toward Jamie. In 2 seconds, she was on her knees beside him, gently lifting his head and holding him close. Her hands moved quickly but carefully, checking for any visible injuries. Jamie was crying, soft, painful sobs that made her heart ache. "It's okay, sweetheart, you're safe." "I've got you," she whispered, brushing his hair away from his forehead. Richard turned just in time to see Lily. On the floor, cradling his son, his heart leaped into his throat. For a moment he couldn't move. It wasn't just the fall that shocked him. It was the sight of this young woman. A waitress, holding his son like he was the most precious thing in the world. He rushed over, but Lily didn't let go immediately. She was calming Jamie down, whispering gently, rocking him slightly like a mother would. She didn't care that people were watching, or that her knees hurt against the hard floor. All she cared about was the trembling child in her arms. Finally, once Jamie's crying slowed, Lily helped lift him back into the wheelchair with Richard's help. She didn't say much, just smiled at Jamie and rubbed his arm softly. Richard looked at her, really looked at her. And for the first time in years, he felt something crack inside him, a wall breaking, a weight lifting. He opened his mouth to say thank you, but no words came. His throat was tight. Lily gave him a gentle nod, like she understood. Then she stood up, brushed off her apron, and went back to work as if nothing had happened. But for Richard, everything had changed. That night, he sat beside Jamie's bed after putting him to sleep. He thought about the way Lily had held his son, not out of duty, not for attention, but from pure kindness. She had done something money couldn't buy. She had made Jamie feel safe. She had reminded Richard of what it meant to care, to connect, to be human again. And he couldn't stop thinking about her. That simple act, in the middle of a crowded diner, had done what no therapy, no doctor, no business meeting ever could. It had touched his heart. The next Sunday came with clear skies and bright sunshine. The streets were still wet from the night's rain, but the morning felt fresh, as if the world had been washed clean. Inside the diner, the smell of butter, bacon, and hot coffee floated. In the air, it was busier than usual, but Lily moved with the same calm and grace as always. Her face looked tired, but her smile hadn't faded. She hadn't expected to see them again so soon after the fall. That moment from the previous week had stayed in her mind. She hadn't been able to sleep well that night, worrying if Jamie was okay. She hadn't even thought about the mess she made or the plates she dropped while rushing to him. All that mattered in that instant was the boy crying on the floor. Lily didn't know if she had crossed a line, if the quiet man in the suit would be angry, or if they would stop coming altogether. She tried not to think about it, but she couldn't help hoping they'd return. When the black car pulled up to the diner and the door opened, Lily glanced through the window and felt her heart beat a little faster. Richard stepped out, dressed as always in a clean, expensive suit. Then came Jamie, smiling softly as Richard gently pushed his wheelchair toward the door. They were back. Lily hurried over to the door, pretending to wipe down a nearby table, just so she could be there when they came in. As soon as they entered, Jamie spotted her and gave a little wave with his hand. Lily smiled and waved back, bending down to say hello. "Good morning, Jamie. You're looking better today." Jamie made a happy sound and gave a small nod. His eyes sparkled. Lily turned to Richard, unsure of what to expect. But to her surprise, he nodded at her, not the quick, distracted nod he used to give, but something warmer. His voice was quiet, but kind. "Thank you for last week." Lily felt something stir in her chest. That was the first time he had really spoken to her. She nodded back, unsure of what to say. Her voice almost caught in her throat. "I'm just glad he's okay." Richard helped Jamie settle into the usual spot by the window. Lily brought over their usual orders, though this time she added a small flower in a glass next to Jamie's plate. Jamie pointed at it and smiled. Something was different now. Richard watched his son enjoy the pancakes and looked up at Lily as she moved around the diner. He saw how she carried trays for other tables while keeping an eye on Jamie. How she helped an old man open a jelly packet. How she refilled a mother's coffee without even being asked. She wasn't just doing a job, she cared. That much was clear. As the days passed, Richard began noticing more about her. He and Jamie started coming more often, not just on Sundays. At first it was every other day, then almost daily. He told himself it was for Jamie that the boy liked the place, that it helped his routine. But deep down, he knew it was more than that. Every visit, Lily greeted them with the same gentle kindness. She would crouch down and talk to Jamie, asking about his drawings or the music he listened to. Jamie had never been good with strangers, but with Lily, he opened up little by little. He would reach for her hand, laugh at her silly jokes, and sometimes even try to say her name. Lie. ... Lee. He'd whisper, and Lily would beam with pride. For Richard, it was both heartwarming and strange. For years, he had built walls around his heart. After the accident, after losing Laura, he didn't think he could feel this kind of connection again. But here he was, sitting in a simple diner, feeling something stir in his soul, all because of a waitress who treated his son like gold. One afternoon, Richard found himself sitting alone at a corner table while Jamie drew pictures on a napkin. Lily brought over their drinks and noticed something in Richard's expression. Like he wanted to say something, but didn't know how. "You okay?" she asked gently, placing the coffee down. Richard looked up at her. He hesitated, then spoke slowly. "You're good with him, with Jamie." Lily gave a soft smile. "He's a special kid. He doesn't usually like people, but with you, he's different." Lily looked over at Jamie and nodded. Sometimes, kids just know who they're safe with. Richard didn't reply right away. He sipped his coffee, then said something unexpected. "I used to be like you." Lily raised an eyebrow, curious. "A waitress? No. Kind." Didn't know what to say to that, so she just stood quietly. Richard looked outside the window for a moment, then turned back. "My wife passed away 3 years ago. Car accident. Jamie was in the car too. That's how he ended up like this." Lily felt her breath catch. She hadn't expected him to share something so personal. She sat down across from him, even though she had tables waiting. "I'm so sorry," she said softly. Richard nodded. "It broke something in me. I stopped letting people in. I focused on work, money, doctors, but I forgot how to feel." Lily watched him, her heart aching for the man in front of her. He looked strong, but his eyes told a different story. "You didn't forget," she said. "You just needed a reason to remember." That conversation stayed with both of them for days. While Richard was opening up in small ways, Lily was still hiding her own struggles. Every morning before her shift, she gave her mother her medicine and made sure she was comfortable. Her mom's condition had worsened. She couldn't move much anymore and needed constant care. The bills were higher than ever, and Lily was falling behind on rent. She hadn't bought anything new for herself in years, but she never let it show. She wore the same pair of worn-out sneakers, stitched at the sides. Her phone screen was cracked, and some nights she cried herself to sleep, wondering how long she could keep holding on. But every morning she came to work with a smile, because she knew people depended on her. Especially now, Jamie looked for her smile. Richard watched her with a mixture of gratitude and curiosity. She didn't know it, but she was becoming a light in both their lives. One evening, after a long shift, Lily stepped outside the diner to take a break. She sat on a crate behind the building, rubbing her sore feet and staring at the sky. The stars were barely visible through the city lights, but she liked the quiet. To her surprise, she heard footsteps. She turned to see Richard walking toward her. "Didn't mean to scare you," he said. "It's okay," she replied, sitting up straighter. "Just needed a breath of air." He nodded and stood beside her. For a while they didn't speak. Then Richard asked something unexpected. "Why do you work so hard?" Lily smiled sadly. "'Cause I have to." He waited. She didn't plan to say more, but something about the night, the stars, and the man beside her made her speak. "My mom is sick. It's been for a long time. I'm all she has. We can't afford a nurse, so I take care of her. I was in nursing school, actually. Had to drop out to work full-time. This diner job, cleaning offices at night, whatever I can find." Richard listened carefully. His chest tightened as she spoke. He didn't know how she managed it all, the strength it must take to carry that weight every single day. "Do you ever take a break?" he asked. Lily laughed, a little bitter. "Sleep counts, right? If I can get 4 hours, I call it a vacation." Richard looked at her, truly looked at her. This woman who had so little, yet gave so much. A waitress with a cracked phone and tired eyes, who had brought life back to his son, and to him. He realized something that night. Kindness doesn't wear expensive clothes. It doesn't need fancy words. It lives in the smallest actions. In hands that lift a fallen child, in eyes that truly see someone's pain, in hearts that choose love even when they're hurting. Richard said nothing more. He just sat beside her for a while. And when he left, something inside him had changed completely. The man who had built empires, who had spoken to world leaders and owned everything he could possibly want, suddenly saw the most valuable person he'd ever met, not in a boardroom or a mirror, but in a diner, wearing an apron, holding his son when no one else moved. He didn't know what he was going to do yet, but he knew this. Lily had changed his life, and now he was going to change hers. The next morning, Lily opened the diner as usual. She was used to early mornings, even though her body often begged for more sleep. Her eyes felt heavy, and her legs ached from cleaning offices late into the night. But like always, she smiled through the pain. She checked on the coffee machines, cleaned the tables, and waited for the regulars to start walking in. The same routine every day, nothing changed, but something did feel a little different that day. Something she couldn't explain by the time the diner was half full. The door opened quietly and Richard stepped in with Jamie. Lily's heart lifted a little at the sight of them. She was getting used to seeing them more often now.
Oh.
At Jamie, and he gave her a small, excited smile. She brought them their usual order before they even asked. Jamie clapped when he saw his pancakes with a smiley face drawn in syrup. Lily chuckled and ruffled his hair gently. "You really like those smiley pancakes, huh?" Jamie giggled in response and nodded quickly. Richard watched the exchange carefully. Something about Lily's presence always made Jamie come alive. His son had started making sounds more often, trying new words, smiling more things Richard thought he'd never see again. Jamie's therapists had even noticed the change in, asked what had happened. Richard hadn't known what to say at first, but deep inside, he knew it had everything to do with Lily. As they ate, Lily moved around the diner as usual. Richard sat back and just observed her. She didn't know he had already begun making quiet plans behind the scenes. He had asked his assistant to gather information about her life, her living situation, her background, even her education. At first, he had felt unsure about digging into her private life. But when his assistant told him about her, dropped nursing school, her dying mother, her debt, and her 2 jobs, he sat silently in his office for over an hour. He was a billionaire. He had the power to change lives with a single phone call. Until now, all he had done was build businesses, close deals, and expand wealth. Lily reminded him what real value was, what it meant to give, even when you had nothing left for yourself. Richard waited until Lily's shift was nearly over before asking if he could talk to her for a moment. Lily, wiping down a table, paused and looked at him curiously. "Sure," she said, brushing her hands on her apron. "Everything okay? I was wondering if you'd like to come to dinner tonight with me and Jamie." Lily blinked. "Dinner?" Richard nodded. "I thought it might be nice for Jamie. He's been asking about you." Lily glanced over at Jamie, who was doodling happily on a napkin. The idea made her nervous. She had never been invited to dinner by a customer before, especially not a man like Richard. But looking into his eyes, she saw no judgment, no pressure, just sincerity. "Okay," she said softly. "I'd like that." That evening, Lily stood outside a large, gated house with her hands trembling slightly. She had borrowed a dress from a coworker and tied her hair back. She had never seen a house so grand. The gate opened automatically as she stepped forward, and a guard welcomed her politely. She was led through a garden filled with white roses and lights that twinkled like stars. The whole place looked like something from a movie. Richard greeted her at the door, wearing something more relaxed than usual, a light sweater and jeans. Jamie came rolling up in his wheelchair, already smiling. "Hi, Lily," he squeaked. Lily laughed. "Hi, buddy. You clean up nice." The inside of the house was even more stunning. Marble floors, paintings on the walls, chandeliers hanging from high ceilings. But what surprised Lily most was how quiet it felt. It didn't feel like a home, it felt like a hotel. Everything was perfect, but it was missing warmth. They had dinner in a room with large glass windows that overlooked the garden. The table was too long, so Richard chose to sit beside her instead of across. Jamie sat next to Lily, reaching for her hand now and then. The food was rich and delicious, but Lily found herself too nervous to eat much. She kept wondering why she had been invited. It felt like more than just a dinner. After they ate, Richard asked if she'd like to see something. He led her into a different room, a smaller, cozier one with a fireplace and old photo frames. "This was my wife's favorite room," he said quietly. Before the accident, the room felt different from the rest of the house. Softer, more lived in. "She used to sit right there," Richard said, pointing at a rocking chair. "Reading stories to Jamie. That was before everything changed." Lily didn't speak, just listened. Sometimes that's what people need most, someone to simply be there. Richard sighed. "After we lost her, I stopped letting people in. I didn't know how to be a good father. I just threw money at problems thinking I could fix everything. But Jamie didn't need more doctors. He needed love. He needed someone who saw him." Lily turned to him, her eyes gentle. "He has that now. He has you, and he has people who care." "You," Richard said, looking into her eyes. "He has you." There was silence between them. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was peaceful. I want to do something for you, Lily, Richard said finally. Not out of charity, but because you've given me something I couldn't buy. Lily shook her head. I didn't do anything. You did everything, Richard said firmly. You gave my son joy again. You reminded me how to feel again. Lily was quiet, overwhelmed by his words. I spoke to someone, he continued. A nursing program. They're willing to take you back. I want to pay for it. Tuition, books, whatever you need. Lily's mouth dropped open. What? And I found a nurse. A good one. She can take care of your mom during the day. You don't have to do this alone anymore. Lily couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her heart raced. Her hands shook. You don't have to, she whispered. You don't have to do this for me. I know, Richard said, but I want to. Because you deserve more than scraped knees and sleepless nights. You deserve a future. Tears filled Lily's eyes. She hadn't cried in public in years, but she couldn't stop them now. She looked at Jamie, who was now watching a cartoon on a tablet, giggling softly. She looked back at Richard, whose face was full of something she hadn't seen in a long time. Hope. I don't know what to say, Lily whispered. You don't have to say anything, Richard replied. Just say yes. Lily nodded slowly, wiping her eyes. Yes. That night, something changed forever. Lily returned home to her small apartment and looked around. The old couch, the broken tiles, the stacks of bills. But instead of feeling despair, she felt something else's lightness. Possibility. She walked into her mother's room and sat beside her. I think things are going to get better, Emma, she whispered, holding her hand. Her mother, half awake, gave a weak smile. Always find a way. No, Lily whispered. This time, someone found me. The next few weeks moved quickly. Lily was enrolled back into nursing school. The nurse Richard had hired came every morning to help with her mom. For the first time in years, Lily could breathe. She could sleep. She could dream. She still worked at the diner part-time. She didn't want to let go completely. She loved the people, the rhythm, the simplicity. But now, she did it by choice, not because she had to. Every few days, Richard and Jamie would visit. Their bond grew stronger, not just as father and son, but as a family that Lily was slowly becoming part of. When weekends, they went to the park together. Jamie loved the swings, and Lily would push him gently, laughing with him as he shouted with joy. Richard and Lily grew close, not in a rush, not in a way that felt forced, but naturally, as to people who had seen pain and were now rediscovering joy. He would walk her to her classes sometimes, bring her coffee, listen to her talk about her future patients. She, in return, brought warmth into his house, into his life. And Jamie was the happiest he'd ever been. He began to say more words. He laughed often. He drew pictures of his family and always included Lily in them. One afternoon, Jamie handed her a drawing of 3 stick figures, one tall, one in a wheelchair, and one with long hair. You, he said, pointing at the figure with the hair. Lily smiled. Me. He nodded. My mom now. Lily looked at Richard, stunned. Richard smiled gently. Only if you want to be. Tears welled up in her eyes again. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I do. Lily woke up earlier than usual. This time, it wasn't for cleaning or serving food. It was because she was finally going back to nursing school. As she sat on the edge of her bed, she looked around her small apartment. Nothing had changed physically, same walls, same broken floor tiles, but everything felt different. Her heart was lighter, her mind more peaceful, and for the first time in a long time, she was actually excited for the day ahead. She walked into her mother's room. Her mother was resting peacefully, and the new nurse had already arrived. The nurse greeted Lily with a kind smile and told her that everything would be taken care of. Lily knelt beside her mother and held her hand gently. I'm going to school today, Mama, she whispered. Just like you always wanted. I'm going to become a nurse. Mother's eyes opened slowly. They were weak, but full of pride. She smiled and nodded slightly. You make me proud, baby, she whispered. Softly, that small sentence gave Lily more strength than anything else. She hugged her mother tightly before picking up her backpack and heading out the door. Meanwhile, across town, Richard and Jamie were sitting at the breakfast table. Jamie was excited too. He kept asking when they would see Lily again, and if she would come over after school. Richard chuckled and promised they would see her soon. He noticed something beautiful happening in their lives. It wasn't just about Jamie improving, it was about the way the house had come alive. The quiet halls now echoed with laughter. The cold, spotless mansion now smelled like pancakes and crayons. It wasn't just a house anymore, it was becoming a home. And Lily was the reason. Lily reached her new nursing school a little early. She walked through the front gates and stared at the building for a moment. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of everything that had happened to bring her here. She had once walked away from this dream because life forced her to choose between it and survival. But now she was back. And this time, she wasn't alone. Her first class went well. She sat in the front row, eager to learn. She took notes carefully, asked questions, and smiled at her professors. She didn't care that some students were younger than her. She didn't mind that she had to start over. All that mattered was that she was moving forward. After class, she checked her phone and found a message from Richard. Jamie wants to show you something he made today. Want to come over for dinner? She smiled and texted back. I'd love to. When Lily arrived at their house later that evening, Jamie came racing up to her in his wheelchair, holding a drawing in his hands. It was another stick figure family, but this time it had 4 people: Lily, Jamie, Richard, and Lily's mom. This is us, Jamie said proudly. And Grandma too. Lily knelt down, her heart swelling with emotion. You drew my mom? Jamie nodded. Because she's your family. So, she's our family too. Richard, who was watching from the hallway, couldn't help but smile. His son's heart had grown so much, and he knew that Lily had helped make that happen. That night over dinner, the 3 of them laughed, told stories, and shared simple joys. Lily told them about her first day back at school. Jamie told her about a new book he liked. Richard just watched them both, silently thankful. Later, after Jamie was asleep, Lily and Richard sat in the garden under the stars. The air was cool, and the only sounds were the soft chirping of crickets and the rustling of trees. Richard looked at Lily and said softly, I've never seen Jamie this happy before, not even before the accident. Lily looked down at her. Hans, he's a special boy. You just needed someone to believe in him. You believed in him, Richard said, and me. Lily turned her head toward him. You didn't need me to believe in you. But I did, Richard replied gently. I didn't even believe in myself until you showed me I could be more than just a man with money. They sat in silence for a while, watching the stars. Richard finally said, There's something I want to ask you. Lily turned to him, eyebrows raised. He took a deep breath. Would you consider moving in here? Not as a guest, as family. Jamie wants it, I want it, and I think maybe you do too. Lily's heart skipped a beat. It was a big decision. Thought about her mother, about school, about the life she had known for so long. I don't want you to feel like I'm saving you, Richard added quickly. You don't need saving. You've done more with your life than most people ever will. I just want you to know, this can be your home too. Lily looked into his eyes. She saw nothing but honesty. Love, respect. I'll think about it, she said softly. But with a smile, Richard nodded. Take all the time you need. The next day, Lily spoke with her mother about the offer. Her mom smiled weakly and said, Sweetheart, you've been carrying the world on your shoulders for years. Maybe it's time to let someone carry you. For a while, Lily squeezed her mom's hand, tears in her eyes. Oh, I just don't want to leave you alone. You won't be. Her mother said they're your family now too, and I'll be okay. You've made sure of that. That weekend, Lily started bringing a few of her things over to Richard's house. She didn't move in officially yet, but she started staying some nights, especially on days when she had early classes. Her room was simple but warm, filled with things she loved. Jamie would often roll in and ask if she needed help unpacking. One day, while Richard was out for a meeting and Lily was helping Jamie with a drawing, Jamie looked up and said, Are you going to marry my daddy? Lily laughed so hard she nearly dropped the box of crayons. "Why would you ask that?" she asked, still smiling. "Because I want you to be my real mom," he said innocently. Lily paused. The words hit her deep. She leaned over and kissed Jamie on the forehead. "I already feel like your mom, you know." Jamie grinned. "Then marry Daddy and make it real." Lily laughed again, but part of her heart was already whispering yes that night. Richard returned home and noticed something different. Lily had placed a framed photo of her and her mom on the shelf in the hallway. It was a small thing, but it meant a lot. She was starting to see this house as her own. He walked up to her in the kitchen and said, "So, Jamie asked me if I'm going to marry you?" Lily turned red. "Oh, he asked me to," Richard chuckled. "He's persistent." They stood there for a moment, just smiling at each other. "I don't want to rush anything," Richard said. "But I do want you to know how much you mean to us. I never thought I'd love again, but I do. I love you." Lily looked up, tears in her eyes. "I love you too." They didn't say anything more. They didn't need to. That weekend, the three of them took a short trip to a quiet countryside, and it was peaceful and green, full of birds, sunshine, and laughter. Jamie got to feed animals, ride on a small pony, and eat marshmallows by a campfire. At night, they sat under the stars again. This time with Jamie cuddled between them. "Best day ever," whispered sleepily. Lily and Richard looked at each other and smiled. "Best day ever," she repeated. Life wasn't perfect. There were still bills, school exams, medical checkups for her mom, and challenges that popped up now and then. But everything was easier now, because love makes everything easier, and they had plenty of that. Back in the city, Lily continued nursing school. She worked hard, studied late, and passed every test. Her professors began to notice her dedication, and one even told her, "You'll make an amazing nurse one day. Your heart is in the right place." Lily smiled. "Thank you. I've had a lot of help." Meanwhile, Richard made quiet preparations for the future. He didn't want to rush Lily, but he knew where his heart stood. He wanted her in his life. Forever. Not just for Jamie, but for himself. And though Lily didn't say it out loud yet, she knew it too. She was no longer the waitress who barely made ends meet. She was no longer just a caretaker or a daughter. With too many burdens, she was Lily, a woman who brought a family back to life, and her story was only just beginning. The days and weeks after their countryside trip felt like a new beginning for all of them. Lily had grown more confident in herself, not just as a student or a caretaker, but as a woman who was finally finding her place in the world. She woke up every morning with a purpose, excited to face whatever challenges came her way. Her mother was getting better with the nurse's help, and Lily could focus more on school, work, and her growing family. At Richard's house, the atmosphere had changed in a way that was hard to describe. The cold, expensive mansion had been transformed into a home filled with laughter, warmth, and love. Jamie's wheelchair often had colorful cushions and blankets, and his drawings were everywhere on the fridge, walls, and even tucked between books on the shelves. Richard's usually strict and serious demeanor softened whenever he was with Lily and Jamie. The three of them had created a bond that was unbreakable. One quiet evening, Richard invited Lily to sit with him in his study. It was a room filled with books, awards, and photos from years of business success. But tonight, he wasn't interested in work or deals. Wanted to talk about something far more important. Lily sat down across from him, her heart beating faster than usual. "I've been thinking a lot about the future," Richard began. "About Jamie, about you, about us." Lily looked into his eyes, sensing that this conversation would change everything. "Jamie means the world to me," he continued, "and you've become a part of that world more than I ever expected. I want to build a life together, not just for us, but for him." "No?" Lily nodded slowly. "I want that too, but it feels so big, so fast." Richard reached out and took her hand gently. "It's okay to be scared, but sometimes the best things happen when we take that leap." They sat quietly for a moment, letting the weight of his words sink in. "Will you marry me, Lily?" Richard asked softly. tears filled her eyes. The proposal wasn't about the diamonds or the fancy ring, it was about love, family, and a future together. She smiled through her tears and whispered, "Yes." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of excitement and preparation. Jamie was overjoyed to have a new celebration to look forward to. He helped choose decorations, picked out his own little suit, and insisted on being the official helper for everything. Lily's mother, now stronger thanks to the care she was receiving, blessed the union with tears of happiness. The wedding day arrived. A perfect sunny morning filled with hope and joy. It wasn't a huge ceremony with hundreds of guests, but a small, intimate gathering of close friends and family. Lily wore a simple white dress that suited her natural beauty, and Richard looked relaxed in a classic suit. Jamie was the star of the day, smiling and beaming with pride as he sat in his wheelchair beside them as they exchanged vows, promising to support, love, and care for one another through all the ups and downs. The room felt filled with more than words. It was filled with healing, acceptance, and new beginnings. After the wedding, life settled into a beautiful rhythm. Lily continued her studies, excelling with each passing semester. Richard supported her every step of the way, often surprising her with little notes of encouragement, or bringing her coffee during late-night study sessions. Jamie thrived with his parents united, feeling more loved and secure than ever before. Lily's mother became a cherished part of their home, often joining family dinners and celebrations. The nurse's help made it possible for Lily to balance her school, work, and family without feeling overwhelmed. The first time in years she felt truly free. One afternoon, while helping Jamie with his physical therapy exercises, Lily noticed something remarkable. Jamie was stronger, more confident, and more independent. He could move his hands better, respond to questions more clearly, and even say new words that surprised everyone. The doctors called it a miracle. But Lily knew it was the power of love, patience, and belief. Richard watched all of this with a grateful heart. He had been so focused on money and success that he almost missed the most important lesson. True wealth comes from family, kindness, and giving. One evening, after Jamie was asleep, Richard and Lily sat together on the balcony, looking out at the city lights. "Thank you," Richard said softly. "For everything you've done for Jamie and me. You saved us." Lily smiled and leaned into him. "No, you've saved me too." They talked about their future plans, starting a foundation to help families like theirs, building programs for disabled children, and supporting women who, like Lily, needed a second chance. Their love wasn't just about their small family anymore. It was about making the world a better place. Years passed. Lily became a nurse, working with passion and compassion. Richard continued his business, but now with a new purpose: to help, to give back, to make a difference. Jamie grew up surrounded by love, support, and endless opportunities. His smile never faded. His spirit shined bright. The little waitress who once held a frightened boy in her arms had changed not just one life, but many. And in the end, the richest treasure was the family they created together.